How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Sabres Chat, presented by Built in Buffalo. I am your host, Luka. Um, since last recording last week, the Sabres went and turned out a 2-0-1 stretch there. It was fortunate where that one came from. It was against the lowly and just a bad Canadians team where they played well overall in open play. There was a unfortunate penalty call late there in that game. I believe it was in overtime that cross check that honestly wasn't a cross check happened. And then they had to kill off a 2-minute power play or 2-minute kill, obviously, in overtime at the end of it. So it was unfortunate to then lose that in a shootout, deep into a shootout, might I add. Comrie actually looked like he was somewhat knew what he was doing compared to a UPL performance where he still has not made a save in a shootout to this point in this season, and I believe in his entire NHL career overall. But that 2-win stretch there was Friday night at home against the Devils, then on the turn there on the island against the Islanders in a gutty performance. Honestly, a surprising performance from this team against the Islanders to kind of gut out a 2-1 win. Or sorry, 2-0 win. Sorry, I don't know why I said 2-1. 2-0 win. Comrie goes from allowing 10 goals against the Stars in his last outing, getting hurt the next day, and then coming into this game with a shutout. I'm amazed that that actually happened at some point in professional hockey history. It hasn't happened since the expansion era, but of course, it happened in the 40s. I want to believe it said, which is wild to me that a goalie at any point in his career was in for 10 goals allowed and then somehow turned into a shutout immediately after that in his next start. But props to Comrie for turning around after an injury, especially and getting that shutout. Props to this team, though, overall. I definitely want to take a time here before I get into the topic of this episode and everything to give this team props. Um, this stretch here followed where the team was extremely open about the mindset and the emotions and the mental part of the game that was getting at this team and into the locker room where pressure built on them. They understood the situation in front of them and they were letting people down. And, Don Granado, Tage Thompson, other players were all kind of acknowledging that they were holding the sticks tight. They were thinking too much. The moment was just getting to them, and they put in just an unbelievably poor stretch of hockey in that time when they finally realized what was happening in front of them and what the opportunity was in front of them. So it's it's great, honestly, and I think it's almost a little bit underrated as well that in acknowledging what was happening and kind of being outspoken and just being upfront with why the team was playing the way they were, and to in turn immediately after those comments are being made put in a solid great performance against the Devils where they had motivation to lock up officially their playoff spot in your building with Lindy Ruff, especially. Just a nice little tidbit in there behind the bench to do so in Buffalo and kind of gut it out, especially being that they went up, I believe it was 5-2 at one point. They allow a couple goals in the third period and it's 5-4. And you're like, is this really about to happen? Because you go into a third period with a multi-goal lead. And the last time they did so was the Capitals game, which did end up getting away from them and they lost in overtime. So, or no, sorry, that was a shootout loss, I believe. But regardless, you let a multi-goal lead get away from you in the third period and end up losing the game. They buckled down, they put in the shifts and made sure they held on to that win. And then the very next day, not even 24 hours later, put in a really good defensive performance, to be honest, and just absolutely locked things down. It was a 0-0 game forever until Okposo finally puts one in the net. It's awesome to see. The empty netter added on to get it to that 2-0 result. It's props to this team. It's props. And even in that one loss in this stretch here, the shootout loss against Montreal, as I said, they really felt like the better team in open play. Some of the pucks just weren't going in for them. Moments just weren't happening for them to finally get that result. An unfortunate call here and there. The one in overtime I also mentioned, obviously, but then I think there was even another one there that I'm not thinking of specifically right now at this point in recording that also was questionable. The refereeing overall for both teams in that game was definitely subpar at best. But in that game, they were still miles ahead of what they were previous to this little 3 game stretch here. They were miles ahead. They're back to playing loose and just understanding how they play best and what they need to do to play to their strengths and to just play within the frame of themselves, I guess is a way to put it, and not kind of have those lofty expectations bring them down and make them do uncharacteristic things. And that Montreal game, like they're without Tage Thompson, that's a huge chunk of your offense, of course, and that's one of the 3 key pieces of that top line naturally. And Middlestat did a decent job, a pretty good job filling in that top center role there. Middlestat's been having a really good, strong end stretch, I believe, in my personal opinion, with this team. That it's great to see. So overall, this 3 game stretch is good. At the end of this episode, of course, I'll give my natural kind of look out until the next season. This is what's coming up. Of course, there are 3 games there, and stuff like that. But at this moment in time, I want to finally dive into the purpose of this episode, and it's in the thumbnail, it's in the title, of course. And that is essentially with the season winding down. We are now in that final 10 game. There's 9 games remaining on the schedule at this point in time. What does the future hold for this team? What do the season will come and go, most likely with them missing the playoffs. And it's unfortunate, especially with where this team sat going into the month of March. And you would have hoped at this point in time we could be still really optimistic when it comes to a postseason berth and finally getting that monkey off their back and everything's going well. It doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. The door is not closed yet. They aren't officially eliminated, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. And I kind of am starting to get the mindset or just have an eye on the future, and I want to start having conversations about that with all of you and really give you guys and give everyone my 2 cents on what the future holds for the current roster and everything with this current team in place and the organization as a whole. And the obvious starting point to this is simply there is a ton to be positive about with this team and how this season has gone overall. Big picture, this whole season, how has it gone? It's gone well. We've hit the goal and hope of what we could have gotten out of this season. And the bottom line is everyone understands what we wanted was meaningful games come late February into the month of March through March if all goes well and into that final 10-15 games of the season, which is exactly where they are currently now. It's not as optimistic as we wanted it to as the season developed, of course, because as I just mentioned, once March came around, there was a real belief that this team could make the postseason. And I was among the many that thought that. And unfortunately, things kind of transpired the way they did. And now they find themselves in the current predicament that they are. And that's a bit of a bummer. But this is definitely an overall discussion right now where the future is positive and it's very positive. And the early goal set to be set right now for this team and this organization is already there, that postseason or bust, if you want to say it, is realistically where this team should be come next season. This team should hopefully develop and continue to grow overall. Things should happen, and we'll get into that in a second, that should improve this roster top to bottom. There are a lot of things that can happen. I think some fans might think they're just going to run it back. I don't believe that to be the case. I don't think that would be the way to do it personally, and I'm going to get into that a little bit further here. But overall, a lot of positives, a lot of great things with this team behind the bench, on the roster, and in the lineup. Kevin Adams is doing a phenomenal job himself from all the way up at the top, all the way through to the fourth line and the grinders and everyone else on the staff that you don't hear about from day to day. there's a lot of positive and a lot of good things to go with this organization, with this team. But obviously, I'm going to focus more on the roster and the players and the guys who put in the work and put in the shifts every single night for this organization. Realistically, to put a number on forwards, defensemen, and goalies that you realistically could pencil in and have as essentially a lock for the roster come next season is the numbers are smaller than I think a lot of fans might really view it to be at this point in time, just because it's so easy to fall in love with your roster and fall in love with a team that brings you unexpected joy and results that you hope to get going into it, and you want to see all of them grow and be successful with this team and for us as fans. And realistically, that isn't always how it works, and the business of professional sports always comes into play, and ultimately you need to improve your team by any means necessary, and most likely that means not everyone is there for the journey. um they have gotten us to this point, and I really enjoy every single player on this roster, to be honest. I mean, if I really wanted to pick one that I would say I enjoy the least, it's in my personal opinion, Jacob Bryson. But look, Jacob Bryson is exactly who he is, and it's not like I'm going to hold it against him either. He is the player who he is, and as being an undersized, offensive-minded defenseman, he makes a lot of mistakes, of course. But I'm not going to sit here and pick on him beyond that. Like, he is exactly who he is, and he's on this team, and he serves his purpose as best as he can control it. So, overall, to get back to the point here, I believe there are 5 forwards, 3 defensemen, and the 3 defensemen is maybe a little on the looser side, but 5 forwards and 5 forwards as well is a little on the loose side. But 5 forwards, 3 defensemen, and the big number to me is 0 goalies that you could realistically call a lock for being on the opening roster come the season opener next season. Those players, real quick: Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, Jeff Skinner. Of course, that top line is going to stay together. Um, 2/3 of the kids line, Cousins and Quinn, and I will dive into that in a second. Your 3 defensemen for sure to me, obviously, are the 3 that I think are the most obvious, and I will say obvious one more time here, just because I realize I said it a lot. But Darlene Power and Matthias Samuelson, those guys are absolutely locks. I said the defenseman first to be a little bit of a looser one because Yoki Haru, I think, still has a role on this team moving forward. I just could he be also, and this also goes for Casey Middlestat, Peyton Krebs, JJ Paterka. I easily can see them being on that opening roster come next season. I just also, with these players, don't see it. They can also be pieces moved in order to improve the team. Like, you're not trading Jeff Skinner, mainly probably because of his contract, but you're not trading Jeff Skinner. You're not trading Alex Tuck. You're not trading Tage Thompson. You're not trading Dylan Cousins. And Jack Quinn, to me, just goes over that line of the upside of Jack Quinn. If let's put it this way for you. Jack Quinn and JJ Paterka are very close to me at this point in time with what they do for this team and where they project moving forward. I just think the ceiling and the projection ceiling for Jack Quinn is much higher than JJ Paterka. And this is just my opinion. If others have different opinions, I respect that. And you can easily win me over with what you might have as an argument. But JJ Paterka is also a valuable piece now that has an entire season of playing that other teams that may have something that the Sabres love in itself. And he could be the kind of the piece that makes a trade work or something to happen to really bolster this roster wherever it is needed. And I will also get into where I think that is the case. But the value in that too is the youth promising slot that is currently JJ Paterka's at, I'll call it youth promising slot 2, because Quinn to me is 1. He's also a rookie. Cousins, I don't include in this. Tage, obviously, I don't, so on and so forth. Those guys have been around for now at least a couple years. They are still young and promising, of course. It's just they're really solidified with the team when it comes to that, if they're still young enough. So JJ Paterka, gets moved, let's say, and then you just slide in a Yuri Kulich, who's having an unbelievable AHL, rookie season himself. He's been a very, very quality player. He is primed to be in the show, be in the NHL next season full time himself. It just seems like a very natural kind of situation where if you can trade for, let's say, a top four defenseman, and I will get into that a little bit more in a second, but if you can trade for a top four veteran defenseman, preferably right-handed shot, I will say, but that can add a lot to this roster that I believe is needed, and the asking price for someone to be that legitimate guy for the Sabres. And, the end all is JJ Paterka, because they want a young, promising guy who could be a top six forward for them for years to come. You probably pull that trigger. I think that's realistic. A guy like Casey Middlestat is still a valuable asset to another team potentially. I think he could also grow and continue to grow with the Sabres and be, that that center that kind of continues with this team in that second, third line. Ultimately, he's going to most likely be a third line center with this roster because you have Tage Thompson, of course. You have Dylan Cousins, who's pretty much locked in as your center too, especially with the kids line. And then if you were to just, let's say, plug and play Yuri Kulich for JJ Paterka, I don't think there would be any fall off whatsoever, to be quite honest. But Dylan Cousins is your center too. So at a full health roster wise, Casey Middlestat is your center three, but he still has a skill set that is valuable enough to the Sabres where Tage Thompson currently hurt, unfortunately. And he has to just slide into that center one and can absolutely take that role and run with it and be good enough, especially at least for Tuck and Skinner on his wings and produce still at a high level for this team. I think there's value in that. Tyson Jost is a wild card to me, of course. I believe he's a free agent after the season. We claimed him off waivers. He's been very good for this team unexpectedly and surprisingly, and it's been awesome. I don't know what they feel about him. I don't know if they just felt like he was definitely a quality guy that they could use for this season, and then they'll just reevaluate his role in the future come this offseason. And if they bring him back, I could definitely see that. I think Victor Olofsson is destined to be moved. He's destined to go somewhere else. It's just he has that shot, but realistically, his position with this team is just needing to be something else. And he could find a lot better playing time and probably something much better for his career and his skill set elsewhere. That two teams could find something. I bet you Kevin Adams can find something else that this team could really utilize more than a Victor Olofsson style player, and then use Victor Olofsson in order to make that move happen. And then you have guys like Zemgus Girgensons, who he provides exactly what you need out of him. What they want to do with him moving forward, I'm not entirely sure. It's not like I'm sitting here thinking that he's going to be gone, but at the same time, it's not like I'm not gonna lock him in. It seems foolish to lock him in all of a sudden that he's going to return next season as well. Like, who knows what they have planned with Zemgus. And then finally, when it comes to the forwards, because then I'll move on to defensemen. There's Kyle Okposo. There's the captain. And Kyle, I want to say there is differentiating opinions on his role with this team and what people want to see out of him in the future. I get this feeling that Okposo has a slot on this team as long as he wants to continue playing. It obviously will be at a reduced cost of what he's making right now, but I think one, he's professional and understanding and kind of self-aware enough to understand that makes sense, and he knows, he understands his worth moving forward to any team. And then of course the Sabres just seem like the best fit for him. He is the captain. He wants success for this club and everything, and he buys into the culture, and he is basically a mainstay of the culture they're trying to build here. And the Sabres will welcome him back as long as he wants to keep playing. It's just, where is he at in his personal life and his career and everything in his own being, that does he want to continue playing? That's the wild card to me. Overall, I think if he wants to continue playing, I easily see the Sabres bringing him back on a 1 year, 2 year, small number contract that will continue his leadership moving forward and just hopefully bring more of a veteran transition into this dressing room to continue to build on that culture and continue to progress moving forward that players can lean on for everything that he brings, not necessarily on the ice, but off the ice, and in the dressing room and everywhere else. Um, I personally am okay with that. I think the value of him is much bigger in that role than paper and stats and a player that then fills out for him could bring themselves. So I'm okay with that. It's up to him. It's up to him in his career and where he's at. Going into the defenseman, this is more cut and dry to me on what this team needs. And this whole time, I'm not going to bring up a lot of like players on the outside, potential, the upcoming free agent pool, potential trade targets that it seems like could be guys that are moved due to either cap situations / contract situations and or just whatever else is going on with them in their current situation. Um, Defensemen to me, the three names, of course, are Dahlin, Samuelson, and Power, all high-end young guys that are just going to continue to build. Dahlin is already a Norris candidate. Owen Power is just going to just grow into himself even more so and just keep gaining experience and become an absolute beast himself. And Matthias is just a physical force that we love to see paired with Dahlin when healthy and can't wait to see him back. Yoki Haru is a guy that I definitely think fits better in like kind of that 5-6, that bottom pair situation. And because of that, could I see him paired up with like Riley Stillman next year? Absolutely. I could see that. Now, I believe currently right now, Yoki Haru and Stillman play on the same side. So that, when it comes to left-right situation, not shot wise, just where they primarily play, that could be a problem with those two. But overall, the big thing that this top 4 unit needs is a veteran, physical and reliable, preferably right-handed shot. I don't think this coaching staff cares too much on left right when it comes to shot pairings, but being that Dahlin, Power, and Samuelson are all left-handed shots, you like at least one defenseman in your top 4 to be a right-handed shot, but they're also not coming in here to play power play minutes necessarily. So, but you need that sandpaper defenseman, veteran as well, that this defensive group can really lean on. Because when you look at it right now, Dahlin, Power, Samuelson, Yoki Haru, Stillman, Bryson, Clegg, Labushkin is slightly older, I guess, but still, like these are all young, greenish guys who don't have a ton of late season and just that overall veteran experience that they can kind of lean on, or maybe even this coaching staff can lean on when stuff isn't going their way on the defensive side of things. And just to throw out a name right now, he is an upcoming free agent that I know of, I should say, sorry. And it just fits everything that I described right there. Gudis from Florida is a name that I love. Every time the Sabres play Florida, and anytime I have a Florida game on, when even if it's not a Sabres game, Gudis always stands out. He is just a stout, classic defensive defenseman, brings an absolute great mentality to a defensive, every shift. Just, and I'm assuming he, in the locker room with all his defensive, colleagues, he is just an absolute beast out there. He just understands his role with the team. He just grinds it out. He's physical as all hell. He can put in production as well, moving things forward. He can make that good pass. He's a plus player. And that to me is also pretty big in this conversation here. Like even in this slight downish year for Florida, although they're still pushing for a playoff spot right now, they're that one out looking in right now, with Pittsburgh and the Islanders currently sitting in the 2 wildcard spots, but they're definitely in it. He's still a plus player. Like he is still a quality defenseman. I believe he will be, he's either going to be at the tail end of 32 or just turn 33 come next season start. And that's a kind of guy that, let's put it this way. So Dahlin and Samuelson, I think, would be a pairing that went all at full health, right? So those two are going to be together. That's probably going to be your top pairing. Owen Power sitting next to a Radko Gudas, sign me up. That to me is perfect. That to me is much better for the confidence of Owen Power and then just the confidence of this coaching staff and this defensive top four unit and everything else. It's just trickle down effect because then Yoki Haru isn't needing to play, let's say, beside an Owen Power or whatever, and then turn out 22 minutes a night. He's not next to Darlene having to turn out 27 to 30 minutes a night, however that goes for, I mean, Yoki Haru, like Darlene might be, short shifting and all of a sudden to get those 26 to 30 minutes. But regardless, if he's paired with him, you're going to be playing a ton of shifts and a ton of minutes. But you need to fill that kind of void that is clearly there for this defensive group. And that really is a veteran, sound, physical, sandpaper like defenseman that can put in top 4 minutes, can be a reliable guy there. A guy like Gudas, who, by the way, is a right-handed shot. It just makes a lot of sense to me. I think it makes a lot of sense to others as well. But, to wrap up this kind of whole conversation, goalies, this is the one that I can easily see completely changing. Do I think all three between Anderson, Comrie, and UPL will be gone come next season? No. Could it happen? Yes. Realistically, one of me, if this is me and just in my opinion and what I think I understand with this team and the mindset and hopefully where they want to be next season, Anderson most likely is going to retire after this year. And now it becomes a conversation between UPL and Comrie. And I don't think that if this team realistically has expectations of making the playoffs and it becomes a playoffs or bust mentality come next season, they can go into it being okay with UPL and Comrie being your 1-2 punch. And with that in mind, I don't think Devin Levi, or it's smart to immediately throw in Devin Levi in the NHL. I think a year down in the A would really benefit him just understanding the pro life and stuff. And goalies are the hardest thing to develop, or I don't want to say hardest. It just takes the longest to develop and really become comfortable at the pro level, things like that. Your Jeremy Swaymans, I'm trying to, I know Jeremy Swayman kind of came in and just did his things immediately. I'm blanking on other examples, but those are rare coming straight in from college or, the junior ranks and non-pro levels coming right into the NHL and just being able to sustain starts and, opportunities night in, night out. And Swayman's not even a starter, right? You got Allmark, who is absolutely going to win the Vezina, is out there playing 50 plus games, and Swayman is just a very, very, very high end backup goalie in this league. He can be a starter if you need due to injury or whatever, but he's an incredibly high end backup. So that is rare. I don't think that is what is probably in the works for Levi. I don't think it's smart, in my opinion. I would be very okay with Levi being primarily an AHL goalie next season and then just kind of get his feet wet with the pro life down there. So coming down to it, with that in mind and Levi not being in there, you need to do something to get a, what I am calling bridge start worthy number one in this roster. And to do that, I think a move needs to be made, most likely in a trade, obviously. I don't think the free agency pool, not that I really have, you know what, I'm going to do it right now quick, but I haven't dove too deep into the free agent pool when it comes to goalies, but overall, I'm not sure there's too much out there. And also free agent goalies and stuff. I mean, it could work, it could not, stuff like that. But there's a guy that I love the idea of, just based on both them most likely being available, for one, due to where their current team situation is and then where they stand and everything. And then two, is a known start worthy like goalie that has some ability to him that could elevate that group for this team. And that's Thatcher Demko out of Vancouver. I said I wasn't going to drop names, but it's another, like Gudas, it's another perfect example of what I think this team needs to improve without ruining the integrity of the future and the overall big picture. Because of course, I just said all that with Devin Levi. I, like pretty much everyone else in this world, understand Devin Levi is the future of the Sabres in the net. Like he is the guy. Everything about him you salivate at when it comes to what he could be for this team for years and years and years. And he could be that next just absolute stalwart workhorse in the net, like a Miller and everything else like that. And I'm all in on that. But you need something for the next year or two to bridge that gap before you can really hand it over to Devin Levi. And Thatcher Demko is an absolute upgrade for this team over Eric Comrie and UPL. And realistically, what that means for the Sabres is that's in a trade if you're getting a Thatcher Demko. And I don't know what they have at goalie. I know they have Delia, who they got recently. I don't remember if it was through just signing or if it was built into a trade somehow. But from last I knew, he was in Chicago, so he's a younger guy there. They have him in there, and then maybe they just want to try out other young options to see if something strikes. And to me, that's where UPL moving to Vancouver, if that's what it takes, plus plus something for Thatcher Demko, sign me up. And then you just live with the life of Eric Comrie as your backup. If that's the group, I would be much, much more comfortable with understanding a playoff or bust mentality with the goaltending group being Thatcher Demko and Eric Comrie than I would say UPL and Eric Comrie and Devin Levi. I'll throw them into that if they want to go back to that, whatever you want to call it, right? Like I think this team could use someone that is a proven number one in this league at any capacity rather than UPL, who hasn't really in his career to date shown that he can be a dependable number one. Eric Comrie is an okay backup, but he's just not a number one guy. I don't believe he can give you performances when you need, but he can also just, the Dallas game can happen. Not that I think it's, all 10 goals are on him, but it can happen. And then, Devin Levi, I just think as much as I want to see him play, I don't think you can just throw him to the fire kind of deal and just rely on him for 50 plus games. He needs to kind of grow as a pro first, and then eventually will come his time. That is that workhorse, and a Thatcher Demko is not going to jeopardize that or stunt it or kind of put it on hold, in my opinion. I think Thatcher Demko, the idea of him is you have Demko with Comrie. Comrie is only here through next season, so I don't know if then they would fill in like Levi as the backup from there. You have Thatcher Demko. I think for if you were to trade for him after this season, I think you get 2 more years out of him. It might be 3, but regardless, you get 2 years. So you get next season, the season after that. If maybe that you get the season after that, of course. And then you're handing it over in that time slowly to Devin Levi. And then eventually Devin Levi just takes over in 2-3 years time and becomes the guy. And then either you bring back Demko as a backup, because at that point he'd be in his early 30s, I believe. And maybe that's where he feels he'd be wanting to be, and or figure out the backup position from there. So overall, this team in the future, this team come next season, the goals and expectations, understand that I truly do believe that there aren't as many guys on this roster that you'd expect to see next season. I think there is a move or two to be had with this team. And I more expect it to potentially happen on the blue line and then in the net. But overall, don't even be surprised if something were to happen up in the forward groups as well, to improve this team overall, because it needs to happen. I mean, this team's expectations for next season should be playoffs or bust. They are capable of it. This is a team that absolutely can make the postseason. We've seen it for the majority of this season now. They are capable of putting in stretches of play that is playoff worthy. They just need to tighten things up, make a couple moves, figure things out, especially in the defensive side of the game. And that includes with, the forward play in the defensive zone, of course, and defensive mindedness. But overall, the blue line and the net needs to be improved. It needs to gain something in order to better this team and get them across the line and finally into the playoffs, which is where they absolutely should be come next season time. So I think the future's bright, to wrap up all of this and stuff and everything like that. Everything should be positives when it comes to the future of this team because of what they were able to provide overall this season and what everything projects. I mean, it is the youngest roster in the National Hockey League. This is the youngest group there is being put out on the ice among everyone else, and they are pushing for a playoff spot, long shot at best, but pushing for a playoff spot right now currently, and they have 9 games to go. That's awesome. This group has never been in this position for over a decade, and they are the youngest group. They're trying to grow into themselves as a pro, trying to figure out their own way while also growing together, and are able to actually do great things. So I think all of it is positive. I think these are all good things. I think everything I discussed here tonight, I don't think it's overall shocking to me. If you are surprised by that, I mean, leave a comment below in the video if you're watching this on YouTube. Uh, Feel free to reach out at Sabres Chat Pod on Twitter if you're listening to audio only or whatever. If you have opinions on things, I am open to hearing what you think. If you really feel like this team should kind of stand pat, be as is, and run it back next season, props to you. I'd love to hear why you think that. But overall, I do think there are things to be had and things that can be done. And I do think Granato and Kevin Adams understand that things need to happen in order to really feel like this team, even at the start, will make the postseason comes that season's end, and then maybe even make a noise or two in the playoffs, and not just be, happy to make it and then have to come up against. Obviously, I don't think Boston would replicate what they did this season, but just for example's purpose of what's happening, come up against a Boston like team that's a historic, just juggernaut, and just courtesy courtesy sweep in 5 and be happy with that, right? I think this team next season will be playoffs or bust and really want to maybe even do something in that postseason berth. So, uh, fun times when it comes to the future. Going into it now, between this episode and next episode, there is again a 3-game stretch. There is a back-to-back, just like last week when I discussed, when it comes to a Friday night home game and then a Saturday night road game. The Friday night game is against the Rangers. The last time this Sabres team played the Rangers was also at home, and it was a 2-1 overtime loss. I was at that game. It's the only reason that it sticks in my mind. Well, my lovely wife to be, my current fiance, she will be, of course, again rooting for her beloved Rangers, but they did already lock up their postseason spot. They are pretty much set in that 2-3 spot. I want to say they're even pretty much set in that 3 spot as it is. So maybe they're just kind of feeling it out and grinding out through the season. Maybe if there's an injury or two, hopefully not. Of course, I don't root for injuries, but if there's an injury or two, they will be on the more cautious side with it. But they are also hotter than hell last I checked, and really figuring it out finally since they acquired Kane and, at the trade deadline, and Senko a little bit before that. And we're kind of messing around with those guys in the lineup and figuring out where they fit. They are really, really hot. So, there's that. And then Saturday night, they are in Philadelphia against the Flyers. I think we've already seen it twice now against this Flyers team. I believe they've been shut out in both of those games as well. But overall, they just put in very lackluster performances. They are not good. I think this team struggles against good, structured, well coached or hard coached, or however you want to say it. I'm trying to think of it like when I think of the Islanders, although they did get that result lately, which gives me a little bit more hope coming to this Philly game that they're going to maybe figure out a better performance against the Flyers. But the Islanders, the Flyers, the Bruins, of course, although the Bruins are just a juggernaut, but regardless, the Bruins, these like well-structured teams, well-coached, everything about them from top to bottom, first line to fourth line, they all understand their jobs and do them at a very high-end level. They are able to grind out the Sabres a little bit, who kind of play a more, of course, open and free and pond hockey-ish at times game plan. I just don't think they match up well against that. That's part of the reason I think they need that reliable top four D-man, that veteran kind of physical presence to kind of slow games down at times when they're playing teams like this. But they have that game against the Flyers. And then Tuesday, not a Monday, but a Tuesday, like last week or last time we were talking about this coming into this past stretch, it was a Monday night game, of course, this past Monday against the Canadians at home. Tuesday, though, after that Saturday Philly game, they will be at Florida in Fort Lauderdale or Sunside, Florida, or whatever it is, against the Panthers. When it comes to the playoffs, if you still think they got a shot, of course, that Panther game is massive. Florida is the team directly in front of them. Uh, stop gapping them between the Saber or stop gapping the Sabres between themselves and the wild card 2 spot currently held by the Penguins. But you need to win the game. I mean, you need to win every game, of course. And kind of where I want to wrap this up and wrap up the episode talking about this is playoffs are still a long shot at best. But what I would like to see out of this team, and I said it last week, and I will continue to beat this drum through the end of the season, is just keep putting in performances. And I said it, just get back to what they knew, how they knew how to play and finish the season as strong as you can. Put in performances like they did these past 3 games, right? Especially the Devils and the Islanders game where they were able to finish off with a positive result. But overall, even in the Montreal game, they played well. Like, play like they know how to play loose, understand who you are, play within your own frame, play within your own mindset and understanding of who you are as a team, and just finish this season strong in those 3 games. Could you easily lose to the Rangers and the Panthers? Yes, like absolutely. You could lose to the Flyers. They've already lost to the Flyers twice this season and have yet to score a goal against them that I can even recall. Maybe they did in that other away game against the Flyers. They might have actually, now that I'm thinking about it, but regardless, it was such a awful performance overall that I can't even remember the Sabres scoring in that one. And I know they got shut out at home earlier in the season. So just put in strong performances, put in performances that you know how to play at a high level, and do what you did these past games and continue to do that all the way to the season's end, all the way through to that Columbus game on April 14th. And look, could the playoffs still technically happen? Absolutely. You need luck on your side. You need things to happen for you. But don't even worry about that. I want to see this team just perform well, get back to know how they play, and just not finish the season on a slide like they were prior to these past 3 games and feel like they're letting people down. Just play comfortable, play understanding who you are, and play the best you can. It was great to see them to get back to that, and hopefully in this game starting, if you're listening to this on Thursday afternoon, tomorrow night against the Rangers, Friday night against the Rangers, hopefully they continue to do what they've been doing recently and just put in a strong performance. That's all I think any of us as fans should ask for at this point. The results will come and go as they are. If they win out and get a little bit of luck on their side, that would be incredible, because then that would most likely mean they're in the playoffs. And that's a surprise to me at this point in time, but it's not even about that anymore. Just finish strong, finish the season strong, and hopefully everything goes well. Thank you again for joining. I love putting these out every week. I may say that multiple times and stuff like that. I love the interaction that I get on Twitter. Again, one more shameless plug. If you're not already following me, I am at Sabres Chat Pod on Twitter. Give us a follow. I live tweet during games. I may not tweet as much during the off weeks, but if you tweet at me or anything like that, I will be more than happy to interact with you there. Be sure the more interactions, if you're also a Bills fan, of course, at Bills Chat Pod. If you're not already following us there, I say us because that is with me and my co-host Josh. Josh does primarily run that Twitter account. So if you're having an interaction there, you will be most likely talking to him, but be sure to give a follow there. But also, if you're watching here on YouTube, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you as always. Leave a comment, drop a like. That was weird. I probably should have said leave a like, drop a comment, but is what it is. And subscribe to Built in Buffalo's channel here. Also, it's don't miss out on any of the Bills content that I myself, my co-host Josh with Bills Chat, or any of the other Built in Buffalo content creators. We put out as much as we can. We love doing it. We enjoy doing it. I enjoy doing it a lot. I enjoy sitting down and talking to you guys all the time. Hopefully the Sabres, continue their strong play that they've had of recent and finish the season strong, as I said. But overall, thank you again for stopping by, listening if you're listening to audio only, watching if you're on YouTube. I am Luka. This is, yet again, Sabres Chat, presented by Built in Buffalo. You all have a great rest of your day or evening, whatever it may be, as you are stopping by here. And take care and go Sabres. Let's go.